hope you've enjoyed the morning session as we move on to the mid-morning session. I'm not sure if you've all heard, but we have an Olympic Games coming to Australia. I'm not sure it's going to be as good as Sydney 2000, but Brisbane 2032 are going to give it a red hot go. To tell us all about it and a collaborative approach to security for preparing the 2032 Brisbane Olympics, I'd like to welcome Dominic Olive, please. Dominic is the Director of Venues for Brisbane 2023, overseeing the planning and delivery of competition venues, athletes' villages and non-competition sites. With over 20 years' experience in delivering major global events and planning Olympics, rugby, Commonwealth Games and venues worldwide. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me here today. So, yes, we won't do it as well as Sydney. We'll do it better. So, no. Joking aside, we will do it together. There we go. Collaboration. There we go. So, yes, my name's Dominic. Dominic Olive. I'm Director of Venues for Brisbane 2032 Organising Committee for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. It's quite a mouthful to get out, so I'm just glad I managed it on this occasion. Going to give you a bit of an overview around the games. I think it's important that people understand the scale and the spread of the games before we can even start talking about collaboration. I've been fortunate enough, as we mentioned, to have been involved in organising some major events around the world, and here also in Australia, including previous Olympics, Paralympics, Rugby World Cups, Commonwealth Games, etc., as well as the small events as well. And I always stress the small events because I think it's important that we all understand the basis and the building blocks upon which we need to build these major events. I'm fortunate enough to also be joined here today by my Queensland Police Service colleagues. So there's Graham in the back who's talking away. Hopefully he's going to give us a little wave. There you go. He's at the back of the room, and along with Greg. Those two gents head up the Queensland Police Service Olympic and Paralympic Games group within the Queensland Police Service, and between them they have a number of years' experience of delivering some of the largest events in Queensland, actually the largest events in Queensland, and also inputting into some of the Australia-wide events as well. So today I'm going to briefly cover, as I said, the scale and the distribution of the games. Importantly, discuss and give you an overview of some of the games partners that we're involved with and working with. Of course, the security operations that we have to deliver in 7 years' time, and most importantly for many of you in the room, how you can get involved in helping us fulfil this dream and vision. So the games. Before talking too much about the Brisbane Games, I think it's important that we understand where the games have come from. Obviously, many of us saw Paris 2024, and some of us were fortunate enough to have gone to Paris to see how they delivered the games. But just a brief history lesson. First Olympics back in 1896, held in Athens, and then the first Paralympic Games was held in Rome back in 1960. Things have moved on somewhat since organising those events, and no doubt I wasn't around, obviously, for those ones. But some of the key principles remain the same, and ultimately is sport at the heart of the games. Sport, and then also more recently cultural activities as well, which involves the flame, as we know and have seen in previous games moving around the world, and then also the host country as well. But what has changed is the complexities, and no more so than probably in the security environment and the security backdrop, some of which we heard from previous speakers this morning as well. But the Brisbane Games, what are we going to be looking to deliver? So the Olympics and then the Paralympic Games. The Olympics, as you can see, take place from the 23rd of July over about 17 days of competition. And then we've got the Paralympic Games, 13 days of competition. But it's more than that. The number of training camps that are going to be happening before the games. When the athlete villages open 10 days before the games, then they compete, then they stay in in the villages before they then leave. Before the Paralympics, then Paralympians come in to the country to then train, compete, and then leave. So it's far more than just what you see there and what you'll see in the media. There are 28 sports that we're going to be delivering in the Games for the Olympics, and then 22 sports for the Paralympics. And those will be spread across approximately 37 competition venues, and I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. There'll be 205 nations coming in for the Olympics with different backgrounds, cultures, and importantly, languages. Provides a whole diverse and very complex situation which we will be delivering these games to. In terms of the number of spectators, and spectators are only one stakeholder, but it's the big ticket item, quite literally, with the ticketed spectators, about 8 to 9 million for the Olympics, and we're looking at about 3 million ticketed for the Paralympics. That's a lot of people coming into this country, whether they come here to Sydney to start off with, or they go directly to Brisbane, and then they might come back down to Sydney afterwards as well. In terms of the workforce that's required to deliver this, so as an organisation, as an organised committee, we're only about 50 at the moment. We'll be growing to 5,000 come Games time. We will then have 50,000 volunteers supporting us, and then we will have 100,000 contractors. Approximately 20 to 25,000 of those will be private contract security alone. Gives you an idea of the scale of the Games, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail further on. So in terms of a brief comparison to previous events that either Brisbane or Queensland has held, but we could use events down here in Queensland, down here in Sydney as well, to really call some of these out. But in particular, looking at the number of venues that are used. So the NRL Magic Weekend up in Brisbane, held across it's one venue, but on the same weekend we have an AFL match at the Gabba as well. At the Gabba as well. Compared that to what we'll be looking at Games time, 37 competitions all happening at the same time. In terms of the number of people, number of spectators, on a daily basis, we're looking at about 650,000 spectators alone. That's before you even start talking about media, broadcast, etc. going on from there. So you can really see that this is going to be of a scale that we haven't seen before, not just as a state, but as a country. We haven't seen these kind of numbers. In terms of our venues, map just showing we have 37 venues, as I mentioned earlier. 35 of them at the moment are due to be taking place in Queensland, and then we've got one venue here in Sydney, and then one in Melbourne. You see those distributed there. We had the IOC come over for one of their COCOMs recently, and I had to kind of explain to them the scale of the country, and obviously yourselves, you understand this. I get it. You deal with it probably on a daily basis, some of you moving around. But when you start to look at Cairns all the way down to Melbourne, what does that look like? Explain to them, well, that's probably the equivalent, or is the equivalent, of going from Paris, previous Games, down to Athens and back. That's the kind of scale that we've got, distribution of venues and operations across the country. And more specifically for the more timely from an LA perspective, that's the equivalent distance of going from LA to New York. So they were gobsmacked when we started kind of coming out with some of these facts. But these are additional challenges and opportunities, I hasten to add. So the majority of competition venues will be in Brisbane. So you can see up there on the screen, we've got 16 competition venues. We've got the main or the largest Olympic Paralympic athletes village, and then we've got the main media centre. So that's where the international broadcasters, which I'll talk about in a second, and the press will be based. Then moving further south, we're down in Gold Coast. We have 8 competition venues, and we have another village. Moving further north to Sunshine Coast, we have another 4 competition venues and another athletes village. And then further afield in regional Queensland, and it's a key element of both the bid, but then also our state government politicians, that they want more in regional Queensland. So you can see there, starting out from Cairns in the north, moving further down through Townsville, Mackay, Rockhampton, Maryborough, and to the west of Brisbane we have Toowoomba. And in all of those cities and towns we are due to have competition venues. That once again provides a fantastic opportunity for the state and for us as a country, but it also presents a number of challenges when you start looking at transport alone, accommodation, etc. And importantly, you kind of question yourself sometimes, hey, I do, why do we do this? Why do we give ourselves these headaches? And then you think about the benefits, not just from a sporting perspective. Hey, it's the biggest event in the world. You want to challenge yourself. You want to showcase the world what we're all about here in Queensland and us here in Australia. But there are significant amounts of economic benefit, employment, both on a permanent basis, but also temporary. The tourism. Wow, before and after in the shots, we're gonna be able to show the world about all areas of our country. It's gonna be fantastic. And then you've got the social benefits as well. And it will really draw all eyes from around the world onto us. So, how do we do this? And with who? So up here we've got a summary, and it is a summary. It looks very busy, but it is a summary of some of our games partners, some of our state partners, some of our federal partners, some of our international partners in terms of sporting federations. We've got the Olympic IOC, the IPC. We've got a number of local governments. We've got the Queensland state government and their various departments. And then, of course, we've got the federal government as well, there as well. And along the top, we have the signatories to the Olympic host contract, the ones that have signed up to delivering this and have a number of deliverables are associated with that. But all of that is not going to be possible. All of this is not going to be possible without far, far, far more games delivery partners than that. In terms of the cost of the games, and it's a question that comes up a lot, from an organising committee perspective, we are going to be cost neutral. So the games will cost just under $6 billion to deliver those operations across all those locations and all those sports. We fund that through ticketing revenue, through sponsors, which I'll come on to in a second, game sponsors, merchandise, and various other means. But we are underwritten by the state government, Queensland state government, but we have committed to and will be cost neutral. What these figures don't take into account is the various infrastructure that will be built, and you will have seen in the media, no doubt, around where will the new stadium be, what's going where, what pieces of transport infrastructure is going to be put into place, etc., etc. That sits outside of the figure that you see there on the screen, and the reason that it sits outside of that there is because that's for legacy. That nothing is being built just for the games; it's being built for the future growth of Queensland and us as a nation. In terms of those sponsors and partners, you'll see, you'll recognise probably all of those brands there. Those are what they call top sponsors, and they are the sponsors that support the IOC and IPC centrally. And then below that, we also have the ability as an organising committee to sign up local sponsors. I say local, they're national, and they'll be world-renowned in their own right, many of them as well. And this is the opportunity for yourselves and the market as well to get involved, and to get involved and be part of the games and get your brand and name onto that list. That's enough about kind of the scale, what happens, how do we set ourselves up. Let's move on to security. I know this is a phrase that is used a lot in our industry, in your industry, our industry, but security is everyone's responsibility. However, it's no more prudent and right to say that of an Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. Talk about some of those numbers, some of those partners, some of those individuals, some of those companies involved in delivering the games. And it really is. And you hear that, and I've got many experiences where the littlest of things were picked up by guess what? Primarily a volunteer. We've got those number of volunteers we've got out there with eyes and ears. Yes, technology has fortunately picked up a number of other threats across a number of previous games, but it really is everyone's responsibility. In terms of delivering security across the piece, it's mainly in 3 tiers that we can split it out. As you can see on the screen there, we've got tier 1, which is the event security. That's us for the organising committee to deliver. So we'll be delivering the accreditation, access control, security overlay, screening of contracted staff. Then we've got tier 2, which is the state level security. Colleagues with Queensland Police Service, looking at threat assessments, incident response, dignitary protection, public order management. And then we have tier 3, the national security overlay, national counter-terrorism, military, etc., as you see on the screen there. In terms of delivering at games, there are as you've come to understand, even from what I've said today, before your own experiences, there are so many different elements to a games. And just up on the screen there, I've called out a few. Talk about arrivals and departures. How do those 9 million people get into our country if they're not in our country already? When do they get into our country? How do they get searched? How do they move around? Where do they get accommodated? How do they get to the venues and villages? What are the venues and villages? Do those venues and villages have facilities already? Do they have security already? What type of venues and villages are they? Are they existing venues and like we're hearing today? Or are they essentially a green field where we're building it from scratch? And then, of course, we need to think about things like coordination, command and communication, emergency response coordination, and then, of course, the threat monitoring as well throughout this. And we've already heard this morning about cybersecurity, and that will continue to grow. I haven't got the stats on me today, but it was jaw-dropping to hear what Paris were having to deal with from cyber threats and cyber attacks per minute throughout their games. So in terms of the scale, I've talked about the number of venues, talked about the number of people. What does this translate to from a security perspective? Here on the screen are a few figures from Paris. They themselves are pretty jaw-dropping in themselves. In terms of security workforce, I talked about that briefly, but they had about 25,000 private contract security officers in operation. That doesn't tell the full story, though. There were 35,000 that picked up their accreditation. There are about 60,000 security who were actually selected and trained to deliver the games. What was fantastic to see, and I've never come across it before, but in terms of their no-show was at peak was 2%. I mean, we were just gobsmacked by that. I don't know how that probably compares to your business as usual no-show rates, but we were absolutely gobsmacked of the size of an event like this to only get 2%. They had that 110 suppliers, private contract security suppliers, who they were having to coordinate. And then they had 45,000 police and military in order to back that up. And all of those 45,000 were out on opening ceremony day for the Olympics. In terms of screening equipment, over 1,000 magnetometers, 250 X-ray tunnels. And fortunately for them, just about 6 months before the games, new technology started kicking in around walk-through metal detectors and such and so forth. And we believe and know and already seen since 2024, and you guys know far better than I, that technology is further developing. So we hope that will continue, and we are interested and want to hear from the industry as to what will be coming through the future to hopefully minimise some of the resources that we will need to deploy. Surveillance cameras, there was over 2,000 CCTV cameras, additional cameras I should add as well, added in. AI technology was starting to be used, but due to French legislation, which had to be put into place specifically for the games, that was rather limited. And then in terms of safety and security barriers, and when I talk about security barriers, I'm not talking about pedestrian security barriers. I'm talking about the kind of 2-3 metre high fence lines with HVM built in. As you can see there, there's over 130 kilometres worth of kit required there. So in terms of our key focus areas over the coming, which we've already started, but we'll be carrying on developing over the coming years. Very much early security, foundational and strategic planning, absolutely key. We've started that with our partners, QPS and federal agencies as well. Starting to look at those threat and risk assessments, and importantly, the roles and responsibilities. Some of those are clear, but of course, as per anything, and we're all doing it for the first time, and I think that's a real takeaway for us here. Whatever people might have done before, the previous experiences, whether it be here in Australia, whether it be in Queensland, whether it be here from a security perspective, no one's ever delivered at Brisbane 2032 Games, and the pressure really is on us to get it right. As I said to somebody the other day, and who came from the hotel industry, it's like basically building a hotel, opening it up for 2 weeks. You have to make sure you get it absolutely nailed on, and then shutting it down after 2 weeks and go, I hope we got that one right. And that's very much what we're faced with. And of course, we need to engage with markets and obviously yourselves as a security industry in order to build those capacities that I just talked about. What solutions do we have that we can develop together? What do you know is coming down the line that we might not know? And that's the key piece, and we're going to be engaging the market shortly. I suppose that brings me on to get you guys getting involved, the industry. How do you get involved? How do we hear about you? Well, we're going to be launching a games portal in October the 8th, which is somewhat in advance of previous games. I think it's about 2 years in advance of where Paris were with their procurement portal. And this gives us the opportunity to let yourselves know, I want to say yourselves, not just security, but across the whole games areas, what we think we will need come 2032, and for you to go, right, if they need that, maybe I can start building my capability here. Maybe there's an opportunity to get involved in the games and help make it the truly successful games that it will be. So in terms of staying in touch with us and getting in touch with us, please look out for that portal. As I said, 8th of October. In the meantime, please do register your interest and get in touch with us on LinkedIn and the various other digital forms we have listed there, and then you will be able to be engaged with yourselves. That was it. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So I thank you for your attention. Hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully you learned something new, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. Hopefully for Queensland Police Service at the back there, because they've had a very nice, easy morning thus far. Any questions? Got a gentleman there?
Thank you. Yeah, hi. Are there any key learnings from the 2018 Com Games that you, in regards to security, that you can share?
Yeah, Graham, do you want to take that one to start off with? There you go. I'll go straight to you. For me, while he's waiting for his microphone, the key one, and my biggest concern or risk or challenge that we are going to face is capacity. People talk about money, and don't get me wrong, money is absolutely key. But Com Games, we saw in the Com Games, and not just from a security perspective, but whether it be temporary overlay, catering, you name it, the amount of kit that we didn't have in Queensland, we didn't have here in Australia, we didn't have in Australasia, we were actually having to ship across from X, Y, and Z location. And it's not just the kit, it's the people. And I think that's something that's lost quite often. It's not just about those 130 odd kilometres of fencing, it's the people to install that fencing, etc. So that's kind of very high on our list of challenges on that side. I think. Graham.
Dom, that answers it fairly succinctly. The biggest challenge for us was getting the numbers. We needed 4,000 You saw the numbers up there for Paris. They had 25,000, 22 out on the street at peak. We couldn't get 4 in 2018. We had a bespoke system that we put together for private guards in 2018, which worked much better than what we'd done previously. We've actually got to work with industry to make it work even better next time around. I'm not saying we need 22,000 or 25,000. We haven't done the planning yet, but certainly at least 10,000, probably more. So we've actually got to work together to work out how we're going to do that. And those conversations need to start today. Like if we leave it too much longer, we know that will fail. Why, from the Queensland Police, am I concerned about it? Because my government will look to me to fill the holes. And I've already got enough staff in our planning assigned to police duties, not other duties. So that's probably the biggest learning, was the numbers, and it's something we've got to work on from today.
Any other questions, gentlemen over there? Graham, you might as well hold on to that mic. You might get another. Oh, we've only got one microphone. Go on.
Yeah, hi Dominic. You focus very much today on game time involvement, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience today are very interested in the building and the design and construction of things. We've only got 7 years and a lot to do in 7 years. So, and as the director of venues, what's your advice to us on getting involved in master planning, design, construction, security integration for in the 7 years to come, rather than just what's going to happen at game time?
Very good question. And just to clarify, are you talking about permanent infrastructure primarily? Yeah. So as an organising committee, we aren't responsible for that. That's state government. So Department of State Development. And through their organisation, and they've set up a statutory body called GICA, or the acronym is GICA, or Games Independent Infrastructure Coordination Authority. They have been charged with designing and delivering the 17 new and upgraded venues that I think your question relates to. Yes. So they will be going out to market, or they are already going out to market. There have been some expressions of interest released, and they will continue to over the years. Obviously, from our perspective, from a games perspective, they are being designed for legacy, but with the key element, which is they need to be able to deliver for the games, so they can be uplifted. That might be something as simple as, I say simple, but a venue that's an indoor sports centre. But then they've got the capacity for us to bring in temporary seating stands, etc. Now, from a security perspective, we're also feeding in, and they know what our security requirements are. However, unfortunately, with experience, it's not quite as easy as that, because a venue's normal secure perimeter may not actually be what the games will require. We talk about 100-metre standoffs, etc. So we may be having to extend their normal security lines and their security requirements. But we will be feeding them in, or have started feeding those in, so they understand what they are designing for. But yes, if you want more detail around that, definitely go to the GICA website, and they will be able to direct you on that. Okay, yep. Any other questions? Brilliant. We'll make sure we share those portal when the portal does get launched. We will share that with ACL, so they can then distribute that as well through the membership on that side of things as well. But thank you very much.